Welcome back to another ActionScript 3.0 video tutorial using Flash CS6. I'm going to go ahead and do that one thing you've seen me do it a million times that you're probably getting sick and tired of seeing me do by creating a new ActionScript 3.0 document. So now that I have that all set, I'm going to go up into my timeline, select layer 1, frame 1, and before I get started, I'm going to tell you what this video is about. It's about strings and constants, and I'll tell you what those are in just a second. But before I do that, let's establish good practice. I'm going to rename my layer to Actions, and I'm going to save it as String and Constants Video. So that way this thing can auto-save if it needs to, or I can find it later, I don't know, whatever. Good practice, do it. So I'm selecting my Actions layer, frame 1, tapping F9, and now we can get to coding. So this is about strings and constants, so I'm going to make a comment. Oops, string and constants video. And, well, let's get started first by explaining what a string is. A string is a... Oh, no, my bad. A string is a data type that represents a string of characters. So that includes letters, numbers, punctuation, basically anything that you'd want to consider as text. So string is a data type, it's a type of variable, so let's go ahead and create our first string. So create a string, and the keyword for variables are var, give it a name, my first string, colon, tell it what type. It is of type string. Yay! Semicolon, end the line. And then let's trace it out, right? Write to output. We're gonna write trace, write my first string, close the parentheses and the line, save for good measure, control enter to test, and now what do we have? We have null. But we didn't write out the word null in there anywhere. What's going on? Let me explain you something real quick. When it's actually saying null, it doesn't mean that you wrote out N-U-L-L. Null is Flash's way of telling you that you have absolutely nothing at all inside of there. There's not even a blank space. There's not a number. There's not text. There's not anything. And that's only with certain data types. For integers and numbers, it defaults to 0. For string, it defaults to null. So it's not the word null. This is just Flash's way of telling you there's absolutely nothing inside of there. So let's go ahead and assign it a value. You remember how to do that. You say whatever your variable is, equal sign, and well, let's assign it to nothing real quick so I can show you the difference. And the way we do strings is just a double quote to start and a double quote to end. I'm going to end the line with a semicolon. I'm going to save, run, and now my output is saying nothing. Oh, that's because there's nothing here, and it's no longer null because we assigned it a value, even though that value is blank, like there's nothing really in it. And that's something to keep in mind later on. Right now, don't worry too much about it. But we wrote all this line. We had to type my string twice just to, my first string twice just to get it to equal nothing. Like that looks like a lot to do pretty much nothing, right? I'm going to show you a trick, and this works with integers and numbers as well. Instead of doing my first string, declaring it end the line and creating a new line and assign it value, you can just assign your variables a value as you create them. So after you tell it a data type, so in this case after string, you can say equals, let's go ahead and have it equal something, double quotes, and I can go ahead and delete this line. And just to prove to you I'm not lying, save, control S, run with control enter, and now it's going to not give me any errors, and it is also going to write out something to the output. Literally something. Ha! I should be a comedian. Anyway, in other news besides unfunny jokes, we have strings. Let's focus up. So we have a string, it says something, and we're writing it to the output. But what if we wanted to add on to our string? Let's say we had another string. Let's go ahead and create another string. Say var string 2, and remember camel case. So your first word is lowercase, and then second word, or every word after that has the first letter capitalized. So string 2, say it's subtype string, equals, let's see, double quote to start my string, else end. And remember that everything within the double quotes is considered whatever your string is. So it's not actually going to output the double quotes as you saw when it wrote out something to our output before. But just remember, everything in between is string. So we have my first string, string 2, and let's say we wanted to add these together, or we wanted to add on to my first string. What I can do is I can make a new line and say my first string equals my first string plus or join or add on string 2, semicolon to end. Let's just control enter to run, make sure that works like we thought it did. And now it's saying something else for my first string. So let's say add on string 2. Now if you remember from our numbers, there's a shortcut for doing things like this. Instead of saying my first string equals my first string plus string 2, we can just do my first string plus equals string 2. Save, and that'll work exactly the same as what we had before. So with strings, there's not, multiplication, division, subtraction, and all that, but you can join two strings together. If you wanted to remove parts of the string, it's a little more complicated because you're not just using addition and subtraction. There's other like functions and things you have to use. So for now, all we're going to worry about is joining them together. I'm going to move on by saying, well, what if we wanted to actually write out a double quote to our output? Because remember, we're using double quotes to show that everything in between is a string. But what if I wanted to actually write out a double quote? Well, let's go ahead and below here, let's say trace, I want to see a double quote, put a space and quote and parentheses, semicolon to end the line. I want to see a double quote. Well, the way you tell Flash that within your double quotes you want to actually write out a quote is a backslash, and backslash is what's used to basically say this isn't, whatever's coming after it isn't a normal character, or maybe it is a normal character, but it's not code. This is part of something we want as text. So I want to see a double quote. The way we write a double quote is do a backslash and then a double quote. So this quote here is going to start our string. This one here is going to end it. The backslash and double quote combo is going to actually represent a double quote in our text. So I'm going to save, control enter to run, and just to prove it. So it says something else. I want to see a double quote, and there's our double quote. Now, if you thought that this looks a little confusing and you might get a little disoriented when you're looking at this, there's an easier way to, or maybe not an easier way, but a nicer way of looking at it. And I'm going to show you where, this will work with variables, but I'm going to show you where constants come into play, right? This value here, or getting a double quote to show, is always going to be a backslash and then a double quote. It's constant. It's not variable. It's not, you won't ever change it. So let's get into constants. So above where we created our strings, I'm going to say create a constant. And constants are sort of like variables. Basically, they are variables, but you can't change them once you assign them. So I'm going to create a constant. I'm going to say const. That's the keyword. So like var for variable, we have const for constant. We give it a name, and constants don't use camel case like variables do. They usually use all caps and underscores to separate the words, and that's just a way. That's just standard procedure, so that later when you're typing stuff in, you don't accidentally get mixed up and forget which is a constant, which is a variable. So we're going to do double quotes. So I'm going to say double, all caps, underscore, double quote, give it a type of string, and set it equal to, well, what is it? It is backslash quote within double quotes. So now wherever we want to write a double quote, we can just say, well, we have our constant, double quote. Instead of doing this, we can just add on double quote. And I'm going to save, control enter to run. And now we have something else. I want to see a double quote, just like we did before. But now it looks like, well, hey, this is a double quote. I know this is going to be here. I'm not getting confused with anything along those lines. I mean, that's just personal preference. Whatever you want to do, knock yourself out. But remember when I said you cannot change constants? So let me just prove this to you. So I'm going to take my constant name, which was double quote, try and set it equal to lol. This is not a double quote. And save, run. It's throwing an error now when I run, saying scene 1, layers actions, frame 1, line 6. A legal assignment to a variable specified as constant. And that's just saying you're trying to assign something to a constant. Constants are constant and you can't change them. So I'm going to double click on my error here. It's going to bring me, this is to where I messed up. I'm going to go ahead and delete this out. And just remember, I wasn't lying to you. So there's a couple of other things that that maybe you're wondering now. Like, well, if I have to do that to do a double quote, and I have to put a backslash, well, how do I just do a backslash? Well, let's create some more constants. So there's a couple of other things. So double quote, let's rename this to backslash, and I'm just copying and pasting some of this stuff. The way we do a backslash is 2 backslashes within a double quotes, because this first backslash is saying, well, this is going to be some kind of special character, and do whatever based on the character coming after it. So we said backslash, and then if it gets another backslash, it's going to show a backslash. So just to prove it, I'm going to trace out backslash and my line, save. And press Control Enter to run. Dun, 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 dun. Now we have a backslash, even though it looks different. It's just, I mean, that's just how text works. This is what we have to deal with. So the 2 other things I'm going to show you are, let's create 2 more, are tab and new line. So we have tab and new line. And tab is just backslash T, new line is backslash N. So save those 2. And just to prove this, I'm going to do trace, let's say tab plus, this should be tabbed, and my double quotes, blah, 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 and tabbed, and let's go new lines. We'll do trace, new plus our constant for new line, plus the word line. So there we go. Control Enter to run. So we have something else, we have our double quote, we have our backslash, we have this should be tabbed, and we have new line, and line is on a new line because we told it new line, which was backslash N. So these are just some useful things when you're trying to format. Maybe you'll use them, maybe you won't. It's really just, I mean, what we end up making. So moving on, let me get into more specifics about using strings with numbers or integers. So what we've done so far is that we've added on, we just use the plus symbol or plus operator. And everything we've done so far, if you want to do addition in numbers and integer, we use the plus symbol. And if you want to, join 2 strings together, it's also the plus symbol. And this can get maybe not confusing in Flash, but it can get, well, you can do some things maybe you weren't expecting. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and create 2 variables. I'm going to say variable A, that's an integer, set it equal to 1, and I'm going to create variable B, and that can also be equal to 1. Let's say we wanted to trace out, this is a special number, right? Let's say we're trying to write out a special number. And let me just close this out. So we have open parentheses, close parentheses, open double quotes, and double quotes. Sorry, let's say this is an added number. Let's say, okay, so this is an added number. And let's say we wanted to display whatever A plus B was. Well, so far what we've been doing, you just say plus A plus B, right? Because, well, A plus B that's what we've been doing, and then you want to join on to a string, it's also a plus, right? Let's go ahead and press Control Enter to run and see what that does. You can see now it says this is an added number, then it has 11. And last time I checked, 1 plus 1 isn't 11. Don't get smart with me and say, technically, if you put 1 next to 1, then it's... No, don't even go there. But that's what it's doing. What's happening is Flash goes from left to right, so it's saying trace this is an added number. This is our string, right? So it's taking this string, and then it's joining on A, so 1. So it's adding on 1, and then it is adding on B, which is another 1, so it's 11. And the way we can fix that is if we change the order of operations with parentheses. So I'm going to put a parenthesis, an open parenthesis before A, close it with a closing parenthesis after B, Control S to save, Control Enter to run. Now it's saying this is an added number, which is 2. And that's more along the lines we wanted. So when you're doing strings and numbers, that's something you got to be careful with. I will explain one other thing about that in just a minute, but what if we change the order, right? We did trace A plus B plus, let's see, make an arrow. That was an added number. And my double quotes and parentheses and semicolon so I can end the line. Control Enter to run. Now it's saying 2, that was an added number. And this time we didn't have to put parentheses around. That's because, like I said, Flash goes from left to right, so it's going A plus B, and it's like, hey, these are 2 numbers, add them together, yeah, awesome, and then join the string to it. I recommend, personally, if you're doing anything at all along these lines, put the parentheses there just for safety. It'll be your little safety net, so when you fall into a nice fluffy pillow or, you know, big baby arms, or I don't even know where I'm going with this. Anyway, just to be safe, that's what we're going to do. So, moving on. What if we wanted to assign whatever number was in, sorry, say we wanted to take whatever value was in A and push it into a string. Let's go ahead and create one more variable just to show you what I mean. So I'll say var my converted int, give it a type of string, and close it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my converted int to be whatever value is in A. And you think we could do that because it's like, well, 1, you can put 1 in double quotes, right? And that's a string, and that'll work. Not quite so with this. So I'm going to say my converted int, so that's a type string. Try and push the value of A into it, and let's see what happens. So Control Enter to run. It's saying scene 1, layer actions, frame 1, line 33. Implicit coercion of a value of type int to an unrelated type string. Basically what's happening here is you can't push a number into a string because they're different data types. The way we can fix that is you can convert it to a string before you try assigning. So I can put, the way we do that is just write out the word string, open parentheses, close parentheses, and everything inside before it tries to assign, it's going to turn it into a string. So it's going to take whatever value that's in A, convert it to a string, and then push it into my converted int string. And where this will be particularly useful is when you have a score and you're trying to display it in like a text box, you have to convert it to a string before you can do that. So I'm going to press Control S to save. Let me put a comment here. So convert to string, Control S to save again, Control Enter to run, and now it runs no problem. And well, we didn't trace it out, so oops, but let's actually do that. So do trace, open parentheses, type my converted int, close parentheses, close the semicolon to end the line, or semicolon to end the line. Then we run. Now it's going to say whatever value was A. 1, we have no errors. Everything's nice and dandy. So that's about it for strings. We have, we can add on to our strings, or we can join strings together. We can add on to the end of our strings. And remember that we have special characters for, or sorry, special combinations for certain characters. So double quotes, backslash, tab, and new line. Remember, we have constants, which are just like variables, except once you set them once, you can't change them later, and you usually write them out differently. And I think that's it. So make sure you understand this, which I say every single time, over and over and over again. But like I said, in the future, it'll matter when we're doing more complicated things. So understand, learn, knowledge is power. Why are you still listening to me? This video is over, obviously. You should probably get working on that next assignment. Maybe watch the next video. Don't start talking now. Don't start causing problems. But seriously, why are you still listening to me? I'm talking, but I told you the video was over, and there's nothing at the end. There's nothing really that you're gonna get out of me rambling, so you can just go ahead and stop. Like, I've gone ahead and probably wasted about 45 seconds now, and if I were to sit here and waste about 15 more, that'd be like an entire minute of your life. You know what you can do with an entire minute of your life? I don't know. Maybe, I mean, depends like how fast you are at things, but I'm gonna end this video now, so adios!